What's going on, BLV? It's Mitch here, live for your over-under picks of week number 4 of the 2023 NFL season. In this video, I go through each game, break down why I believe it'll be an over or an under for the total this week. Last week, we went 9-7, so we were above 500 versus the over-unders last week. Not bad, not bad. This is my first ever season picking an over-under for each game this NFL season. So I feel like if I can just be above 500 every week, I feel good about that as a first-time rookie picking every over-under. 26, 21-1 on the season. There were a ton of unders in week 1. There were more overs in week 2. In week 3, it seemed to be pretty split. We'll see how week 4 goes. But what I've seen is a lot of these defenses now are picking up some big-time injuries. So that might have a big impact on potentially some of these games going over. But let's begin with Thursday Night Football. And let me know in the comment section, whether you're live or in the comment section below if you're watching this after the fact. Let me know which totals you like the most this week, what your money picks are for the over-unders in week number 4. Let's start off with the Thursday Night Football game. We've got the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. Packers are currently underdogs of 2.5, and I checked this earlier today, and you guys know that I have a best bet on the Packers this week, so I'm all over the Packers plus 2.5. As a Packers backer and a guy that likes Green Bay at home in this game, I was very happy to see that the spread moved in the opposite direction, to see that you can now potentially get 2.5, which is not insignificant. 1.5, a little insignificant on the spread, although we've seen a couple games, including one Packer game last week, be decided by a 1.5 point spread. But I do think 2.5 is a lot more valuable. Even though it's not a 3, it's a lot more valuable in today's NFL, especially with the amount of 2-point conversions that go on. So 2.5 is definitely significant. But in terms of the total, it was 46. It moved to 45. And that's something I've brought up in previous weeks. Like, because I do this video on Thursday, I'm not getting the best of the numbers. So if you are betting totals in the NFL, I would definitely say so far this season, what I've felt so far is that totals, you want to bet them early, and spreads, you want to maybe wait it out a little bit longer. And maybe don't wait till Sunday morning, but place your bets on Friday, on Saturday. Wait out and see where the injury reports land, because oftentimes I haven't really gotten the best of the number other than week 1, in my opinion, where there was a lot of action. Week 2, maybe a little bit. But it felt like week 3, week 4, the numbers haven't really been shifting too significantly in my favor. But maybe that's just the way it's been so far. But I've got the total at 45, and I'm gonna go with this one's really tough, honestly. Like, I feel like this game, like, my score prediction is 24-20, 24-21, so I'm leaning towards the under here. I've got the under because the one thing that sold me is when you look back last year at these two matchups, both games were low scoring. Both games ended up being below this total of 45, so I think it's a little bit of a projection with the Packers offense being better this year, with Jordan Love at the helm, them having just better play calling, better sequencing, better rhythm offensively. Christian Watson being back, Aaron Jones being back for this game. They are missing a couple offensive linemen, so I think that they're counting on a little bit more explosiveness from the Packers offense than we saw last week. And then for Detroit, they do have injuries on defense, so maybe the Packers are able to execute there. The Lions do have a very good offense and a lesser defense, but not a bad defense. But I thought we saw last year that both of these defenses kind of have a decent feel for each other offensively. Like, they understand the schemes. They're familiar with how LaFleur wants to attack, how Ben Johnson wants to attack. They're familiar with the schemes. So for me, that makes me lean towards an under, but just barely. Like, I think both teams will get to the low 20s, and it will be decided by a couple points. So ultimately, I've got the under on the 45 for Thursday night. Moving towards Sunday, we've got the London game. I'm leaning towards the over 43.5 here on this game, but I could really see it going either way. This is not one that I'm rushing out to bet, that's for sure. So let me just think through it for a second. I think Jacksonville's defense is really good against the run, and that is Atlanta's strength. London games can be very wild, so I don't know. Sometimes they can be low scoring, sometimes they can be high scoring. Oftentimes you see a shootout or a blowout, honestly, for the team that's favored. A lot of the times blows the other team out. And I think Jacksonville is really good against the run. That will slow down Atlanta. I don't really trust Atlanta's passing game. On the flip side, though, I do like the matchup for Jacksonville from an offensive standpoint, because I think they will be able to pass the ball against Atlanta's secondary that I don't think has really been tested all that much this season. They haven't exactly played the most high-scoring offenses. They played the Lions last week. They forced a couple field goals, but Jared Goff had himself a good game and was pretty efficient in that game. So I think Jacksonville gets back on track. I'm leaning towards the over, though, with two offensive coaches, two guys that have proven to be pretty aggressive. And maybe the fatigue hits on defense a little bit more from that flight. I don't know. But I'm just going to go with the over. But this is certainly not one that I'm betting. So over for the game in London. Next up, we've got the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. Everyone and their mom is going to be picking the over here. So that just wants me to pick the under. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't really have any strategy here. I just feel like 54 is a really high number, and everyone is going to be betting the over. And there's a reason they hang numbers like this. So I'm just going to go with the under. Now, I feel like both teams will possess the ball. Both teams maybe will try to keep the ball away from the opposing offense. I think both defenses will play very conservatively, which means, okay, they're going to let you get to the red zone, and then it's a matter of long drives, good execution, and you're going to have to score in the red zone. I think both defenses are purposely going to play very conservatively and basically make those offenses kill the clock and take their time down the field, which I think leans me towards the under. I'm not betting it, though, with these two explosive offenses. That's just the way I'm kind of feeling the game out. The Minnesota Vikings and the Carolina Panthers. I like the over in this game. I'm not exactly sure if we've heard if Bryce Young or Andy Dalton's going to be playing. I actually don't know what the update is there. If Andy Dalton is playing, I would certainly go with the over, but Bryce Young starting, I feel like he's not looked the best so far this season, and Carolina has had two different products on the field from an offensive standpoint with two different quarterbacks. That being said, when you look at who Bryce Young played, he played the Saints, good defense. He played in Atlanta, pretty solid defense overall so far this year. And then Andy Dalton was able to play Seattle's defense, which in my opinion is one of the 10 worst defenses in football right now. They're giving up a lot of yards, especially through the air, and they're giving up points. So I think it's an over regardless, but if it's Dalton, I definitely feel this is an over, and this would probably be a best bet candidate for me, or star this one as a potential bet. I feel like Minnesota's going to score 30 in this game, even on the road. I like how they're playing offensively. I think their run game's getting better. Their weapons, I just feel, are too much. I think Carolina is outgunned here. They've lost a lot of pieces defensively. We brought that up last week in a game that I felt was a strong over candidate with Seattle and Carolina. I feel like Carolina is going to get torched by another good passing game and good receiving group from the Vikings. Jefferson versus Dante Jackson, Jordan Addison versus, I don't know, is it CJ Henderson out there? They don't have Shaq Thompson. Frankie Louvu is beat up. They're missing Xavier Woods in the back end. So I feel like this is just a Carolina defense that's probably the most beat up across the NFL, and they're playing a potent offense right now in the Vikings. And the Vikings defense certainly is not a Hall of Fame legendary unit. So I'm going with the over in that game. Next up, we've got the over under 46 for the Broncos and the Bears. And despite these defenses being awful, this feels like a high number for teams that are so bad. I mean, these two teams are so bad. Typically, two teams, I'm not going to play this. I'm not going to bet this. Like, don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted here. But I just want to pick the under because typically when you have a game that is between two terrible teams, they don't score a lot of points. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't seen anything from Chicago's offense that makes me think that 46 is going to be an over here. Now, Denver's offense has been pretty good, but when you look at who Chicago has played from an offensive standpoint, Kansas City, they've played Green Bay, and Tampa. I guess Tampa Bay would be the worst offense they've played, but I think Tampa scored about 24. I think Denver scores about 24. I think Chicago scores about 20. And I think Denver probably covers the game, but I'm leaning towards under between two bad teams in a toilet bowl here. It just feels right to me. Next, we've got the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. I'm going under. This is probably a heavily bet under 40.5. This is just two teams that look better defensively than offensively. Cleveland's defense might be the best in football right now, and they're at home. Baltimore, yes, they'll probably get some players back on the offensive line, which will help them score points and move the football. And this is the best quarterback in terms of the form they're in, Lamar Jackson over a Joe Burrow right now, that Cleveland has played. So it's going to be the biggest test that Cleveland has had, but it helps that they're at home, they're healthy, they've been playing awesome, and the Ravens' offensive line might not be 100%. I just love how Cleveland's playing on defense. And then the Ravens are playing really good on defense as well, and they could also get reinforcements in the way of Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Williams. Their pass rush has been better than I expected. Deshaun Watson's been a roller coaster this year. And I think Baltimore's secondary is a lot better than Tennessee's, a unit where Deshaun had some success against them, but I don't think he'll have similar success against Baltimore. I think they played last year to a 13-3 score in one of their games. This definitely feels like an under for me. Next, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Houston Texans. This is a total of 42. This is tricky because I've been off on Houston all year from a totals perspective, it feels like, because their offense just is playing above the level of their personnel. Their offensive line's been injured. Their receiving core, to me, wasn't that great coming into the year, but they've played a lot better than expectation. It's really been their run game that hasn't played as well as I would have expected, but CJ Stroud has just overcome and played absolutely phenomenal. He's been special so far this year. Pittsburgh's offense has been pretty putrid. They played better against the Raiders, but the Raiders are one of the worst defenses in football from a personnel standpoint. I think this is an under, and the reason I lean towards the under is the Steelers' pass rush against an offensive line in the Texans that is just absolutely destroyed by injuries. I think they have 4 backups playing in this game. I just don't think a rookie quarterback against a Mike Tomlin defense will be able to survive. I love CJ. I love me some CJ. I just don't think he'll be able to get it done to a 20-point game in this one. When you look who the Texans have played from a defensive standpoint, they played Baltimore. I think that was probably the closest unit you could evaluate towards Pittsburgh, and they struggled a bit more in that game than they did against Jacksonville. So I feel like the Steelers should be able to take advantage of their mismatches up front. They have a good enough secondary to not get toasted. They're well coached on that side of the ball, and they're not well coached on offense. DeMeco Ryans is significantly better as a coach on defense for the Texans than Matt Canada, so I'm going to go under 42 in this game. Next up, Tampa Bay, New Orleans. Another under, unfortunately. I know the overs are exciting, but this is another under for me. This is one I've actually bet because I just seen this game over the last 4 years. Very closely paid attention to this rivalry because of Tom Brady, who's my favorite player of all time. These games are just nasty. They're brutal. They're ugly. And both defenses thrive in this matchup. They get up for these games. There are some injuries to pay attention to for the Bucs defense. Definitely take a look at that. I think that's why this spread went from 3 to 3.5, despite Jameis Winston being quarterback and not Derek Carr. I feel like there's a big deal if some of these Bucs players don't play. but I do feel they're going to get suited up just because of how big of a game this is within the division. This game just screams like 17-14 to me. Maybe one of these teams gets to 20, but no Derek Carr. I think Baker will struggle in this game. We've seen how Marshawn Lattimore covers Mike Evans. They don't have Tom Brady anymore. This is a game that just feels like the Saints are going to be able to control the game from their defensive standpoint. The Bucs defense has been playing well this year, and they're playing a much worse offensive line this week than they played last week against the Eagles. I think they take advantage of that. I'm going under 40.5 in this NFC South rivalry game. Los Angeles and Indy. This total's been moving up. And I'm still going to play the over here. I feel like the Rams are going to have success against, as long as, now I will caveat this. I'm not sure the status of Noteboom, the left tackle of the Rams. If Noteboom is in, I would consider betting this. I wouldn't bet it if Noteboom is out. But that being said, the one thing that convinces me of an over in this game is Sean McVay's success against this specific scheme of Gus Bradley. We've seen him have success against Seattle already this year. We've seen him have success against Seattle schemed-based defenses, and I feel like Stafford's going to have a big bounce-back game. Rams were really unlucky in their last matchup against the Bengals. I think they're going to score into the 20s, maybe 27-ish type of points. And the Colts have a sneaky, efficient offense. Anthony Richardson, I think, will be able to run the ball with the quarterback run game. And both coaches, I would say the Colts are aggressive, which I think on fourth downs, which I think will force McVay to be a little bit more aggressive in this game. So I see it as like a 27-20 type of game where it just goes a bit over, but that's where I go with Los Angeles and Indy. Washington and Philadelphia. Total is 43.5. I like the under, I think. It scares me because the Eagles have been a high-scoring team, but this is the way I view it. I feel like Washington is going to cover. I feel like Washington's defense matches up well with the Eagles from a front perspective, and I think that the Eagles will rush the quarterback of Sam Howell and get a lot of hits and sacks, which I think will cause Washington to struggle in the passing game. But I feel like this is one where these two teams know each other really well. It's a divisional matchup. Washington has played the Eagles very, very well. I think one of their games last year was like 24-8. The other game wasn't over. It was like 32-21 or something, and Washington actually won by double digits. That was kind of fluky, though. But the way I view it is the defensive line of Washington can stalemate Philadelphia's offensive line, and I feel like the Eagles' defensive line should dominate Washington's offensive line, which leads me to believe this will be close, competitive, and an under game. But it could go over. I wouldn't be shocked. Next, you've got Cincinnati and Tennessee. This is one of my favorite picks of the week. I'm going under here. Cincinnati is not right offensively 100% with Joe Burrow being a very conservative and short passing game guy this season. I also feel like that they will have success through the air at times, but I don't think it will be consistent. Like, I like the matchups for the receivers for the Bengals to make some plays, but I don't think they'll be able to run the ball, so they'll be pretty one-dimensional, and Tennessee will probably get burnt a couple times, but also make some plays defensively. And then for Tennessee, their offense is really bad. Like, their offensive line is terrible. Cincinnati's defense looked really good last week. They got a lot of pressure. They had 7 sacks on Stafford. It could be 7 sacks against Tannehill. This is the worst offensive line in football, in my opinion. And their passing game is just very lackluster. They don't bring a lot to the table here. Cincinnati has good corners that can match up. I think this is an under. I would play the team total Tennessee under as well if you're looking at that. Next, we've got the 48.5 total of the Raiders and the Chargers. I want to say over here, just because it's the Chargers and the Raiders, two teams that have better offenses than defenses. I don't really know who's playing quarterback for the Raiders, so it scares me a little bit, which makes it not a bet, but I still feel like it's an over. The scores last year, though, I think, I'm actually going to check this. I feel like last year they were both under this. So this could be maybe an under. The one thing that scares me is the Raiders defense the Raiders offense has not been playing to the level that they were last year. like from a point standpoint. So last year the game was 27-20, which would be an under, and 24-19, which was also an under this total last year. These two teams are not all that different. I actually think the Raiders are better defensively than last year because they were absolutely putrid. And the Chargers are probably worse defensively, but they're probably a little bit better offensively. This is tough. I wouldn't bet this, but hey, history last year says go under, so I'll take the under, I guess. Then we've got New England and Dallas. 43 is the total. Ooh, hard to go over in a Patriots game, I'm going to be honest with you. And right now, Dallas's offense does not look very good. The one thing that doesn't make me bet this is the game a couple years ago in 2021 was like an unexpected over. Dallas, I think, had 30 points against New England in New England, and New England's defense is better now, but I don't think it was bad then. And then New England actually put up a good number on Dallas in that game as well. It was like a high-scoring, crazy game, back and forth type of game. So it could be an over. Both of these defenses I do feel are stronger than their offenses, though. And the way that both of these teams play is pretty conservative from a coaching standpoint. They don't take a lot of chances on fourth down. They kick their field goals when they get the chance. Both teams like to run the ball. So it does feel like an under, but I do think that there's going to be some over money on this game. So I will take under, but I am not confident. Next, we've got the 49ers and the Cardinals. I'm going to go over 44 just because the Cardinals have been an over team this year for the most part. The 49ers have been scoring at will, so I could see this going over something like 31-17 for the Niners, probably right on the tip of 44. So I'm going to go over this one, but I don't feel like it's a bet. I feel like it's a solid play, solid over. Cardinals have just been a sneaky, weird, creative offense. Maybe they could be absolutely shut down by the Niners. This is probably the best defense they've played so far. But hey, the Cardinals dominated the Dallas defense, and that's pretty impressive. So I'm going to go over in that game. Next, this is one of my favorite totals of the week. I'm going under Jets and Chiefs. Somebody tell me how the Jets are going to score 14 points against really any NFL team, but a top 10 defense like the Chiefs, I don't see it happening. And the Chiefs, last week, somehow that total went over against the Bears, but that was because of the Bears' defense. They're actually playing a pretty good defense here in the Jets. I do think the Jets' defense is a tad overrated, which is why I believe the Chiefs will cover this number. But I don't think that they'll put 30 plus on the Jets' defense in New York. So I'm going to go, I feel like it's like a 27-10 type of game. So I'm going to go Chiefs to cover, but this is going to be an under for me. Chiefs' defense shows out once again. And the final game is the Giants and the Seahawks. Total is 47.5. I'm going over here. I think both of these offenses are better than the defenses. And I feel Geno, the receivers, they're clicking. Offensive line hasn't been much of an issue. The Giants will blitz and probably will get some sacks and some pressures. But I feel like at the same time, Seattle will make some big plays down the field with Metcalf, Lockett, and company. And then on the other side, I think this is a big bounce back spot for the Giants. They've had a long rest, right? They played on Thursday. They're going to play on Monday. So that's a long rest, a lot of time to prepare for this game for Brian Daboll against a really bad Seahawks defense. And Seahawks is going to have to travel across the country. Just feels like a shootout to me, as long as there's no weather that's really impacting this game. I could see Daniel Jones having a big game here, statistically speaking, and it being a back and forth contest. So I think it's going to be one team scores 30 and ends up winning, and one team is in like the 24-27 range. So I'm going to go over on 47.5. Those are your picks for the over-unders for week number 4. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to Gronk spike the like button and subscribe for more. We'll see you tonight for Thursday Night Football. Packers, Lions. I'm wearing my green. Go Pack, go. We'll see you later. Peace.